What does it take to transform hatred into love? Imagine walking into a prison filled with hardened criminals, armed with nothing but kindness and a few loaves of bread. This is the remarkable story of how Saint John Bosco brought light into the darkest corners of Turin's prisons. The Miracles and Prophecies of Saint John Bosco, a project of America Needs Fatima. I'm your host, Adrian Fonseca. Subscribe for new episodes every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Today we'll explore how Don Bosco's extraordinary prison ministry transformed the lives of those society had forgotten. We'll discover how his approach of patient love and genuine concern broke through barriers of hatred and despair. And as we delve into this powerful story, consider how many people today are imprisoned, not by iron bars, but by despair and loneliness, and maybe even abandonment. Through Don Bosco's example, we'll learn how simple acts of kindness can unlock the most hardened hearts. And before we begin our journey into the dungeons of Turin, I'll share with you later how you can access Don Bosco's insights on transforming lives through love. But first, let's step into the world where hatred ruled until one priest dared to show a different way. Prison ministry is not for the faint of heart, yet it became Don Bosco's preferred way of saving souls. Many of those unfortunates had perhaps never heard a sincere word of affection their whole lives. Rejected by society, punished by justice, betrayed by accomplices, disheartened before the world, degraded in their own eyes, without any support to be able to rise again. Furious at the deprivation of freedom, the majority of these prisoners lived by hatred. Now come with me into the dungeons of Turin and see what light Don Bosco shone on those dark places. It is easy to love the lovable, but evangelizing prisoners is an undertaking not so easily accomplished. Those places of doom and gloom are the most in need of priestly ministry. Not all priests, however, have the courage to stop in those dark environments. Among those bolts, those big bars, and those surly faces that arouse fear at the mere sight of them. But our Saint Don Bosco spent entire days in the prisons of Turin. He would even hold spiritual retreats there. When Don Bosco first began his prison ministry, the priest was insulted and scorned by the prisoners, who knowingly used jokes and languages that mocked the purity the priest held so dearly. And yet he was able to master his resentment, responding with calmness and a smile, even when his acts of kindness were repaid by a shrug, a curse, or a blasphemy. Every Saturday, he would arrive with sacks full of tobacco or loaves of bread, in the hope of cultivating relationships with the young men there. By first befriending them, he would later encourage them to come to the oratory when they had the good fortune to leave the prison. At the same time, however, he did not neglect the adults. In mid-19th century Turin, the inmates did not have individual cells. 25 to 30 of them at a time were crowded into a single room with nothing but a straw mattress to act as a bed, table, and chair. Into this room were thrown together veteran murderers and novice thieves. The older prisoners, utterly shameless, gloried in the crimes that they had committed, while the younger ones were swept up in their gory tales of their elders' glorious crimes. And knowing that to succeed in anything, one must go about it in stages, he limited himself at first to making brief visits to the prison, speaking to the prisoners with respect and affection. He showed the older ones a great deal of compassion, trying to alleviate their pains. His patience finally tamed them. Once he had gained their trust and made friends with them, he often asked them to do him a little favor. To please Don Bosco, the inmates gradually stopped cursing, blasphemy, and brawling. One at a time, each inmate began to understand his worth by seeing himself loved and esteemed by a priest known as a saint. In this way, Don Bosco drew them to himself to lead them to God, whom he described to them as a most loving father, always at their side to benefit them. He knew this step was necessary to make up for the damage done by all those who had abandoned them when they were children. This is how he acquired such power over them. It even got to the point that when he appeared, they all welcomed him cheerfully and with open arms. Charity was certainly used to cover a multitude of sins. Sincere love alone Love shown by deeds and not words, love of sacrifice, is the most persuasive of all languages. The prisoners, when seeing that the priest wanted nothing but their good fortune, and that when he said that he loved them, he did not lie, were moved. A deep gratitude penetrated their hearts. Once they knew they were loved, Don Bosco had finally earned their trust and confidence. They began to ask themselves, what does this man, this priest, have to gain from spending his time in this horrid place with us? So it must be that this religion that guides him is divine, that those doctrines he teaches us are true. Don Bosco then, with his persuasive words and upbeat personality, taught and explained Christian doctrine to those dear prisoners who are now truly his friends. They easily learned the truths of the catechism, and in their hearts, little by little, induced themselves to make a good confession. You might be tempted to think that Don Bosco's work with the prisoners of Turin has little to do with you and me. But prison today takes many forms. When we are called to show charity toward the sick and imprisoned, we can do this today without stepping foot into a hospital room or even a prison ward. In our cold and fast-paced culture, many are prisoners of despair and need the hopeful message of Fatima to be set free from their chains. How many others feel abandoned by those who ought to have loved them the most? Can we fill their emptiness with the pure love of the Blessed Virgin? With this in mind, feel free to rewind the video and take some notes. Don Bosco worked miracles, and by following his example, you can too. Don Bosco's prison ministry shows us that no heart is beyond the reach of love. What if you could learn his transformative methods directly from the saint himself? As a monthly promoter, you'll receive exclusive access to Don Bosco's personal writings, including Roadmap to Heaven and Sacred History. These aren't just historic texts, they're practical guides for reaching souls imprisoned by today's challenges. Through his clear, direct writing style, you'll discover these same principles that turn hardened criminals into men of faith. Whether you're helping someone trapped by despair, addiction, or loneliness, Don Bosco's timeless wisdom will show you the way. Ready to learn from this master of spiritual transformation? Become a monthly promoter today and let Don Bosco's insights guide you in freeing imprisoned hearts. The link is in the description box down below right now. Don Bosco's work in Turin's prison teaches us that no heart is beyond reach. His patient, loving approach transformed hardened criminals into men who could recognize their own worth and God's love. Today, while we might not enter into physical prisons, we encounter people imprisoned by different chains: despair, loneliness, addiction, or abandonment. Don Bosco's example shows us that persistent kindness, genuine concern, and patient love can break through even the strongest barriers. His methods teach us and remind us that transformation happens in stages. First, we must show respect and genuine care. Then we build trust through consistent acts of kindness. Finally, we can help others recognize their inherent dignity in God's love for them. In our modern world, where many feel imprisoned by isolation and despair, Don Bosco's approach offers hope and a practical path forward. What aspects of Don Bosco's prison ministry resonated with you the most? Share your thoughts in the comment section down below. I would love to hear how you might apply his approach to reaching those who feel imprisoned in today's world. Thank you for joining me today. Saint John Bosco, pray for us. May God bless you, and Mary Immaculate keep you under her mantle. God love you.